We all live under the rain. I'm living under the rain at the moment on a fairly tardy lightning storm. Right. 3 more pieces. And this piece was sent to me by one of the members. And is very revealing and confirms the shenanigans that goes on in this organisation through fear, greed and intimidation, with a healthy dose of blackmail thrown in. And also why we need full control system group disclosure with full disclaimer, with the exception of interfering with children. And so this is the story. I recently had an encounter with a man I should call Jay, and it was immediately apparent to me that he worked with Langley, the CIA, in some capacity. And we began to talk about security clearances he had obtained while in service of the agency, and he was quite forthcoming with his story once we established our bona fides. But for comparison, when I was issued my original top secret clearance, it covered normal everyday missions around the world. Later, when working with various agencies which required higher clearance and compartmentalization, I was required to get a TS SBI, Special Background Investigation clearance, and compartments could be added to this. Other levels were based on the job I was doing at the time. For the example of the level of secrecy could be 1A1, which was the highest for someone flying a State Department mission, and these are the missions I most commonly flew, or 1B1 for the Presidential Airlift or Secret Service Airlift. Unfortunately, that also included Bill Clinton, Al Gore, the entity known as Anne, formerly known as Hillary, and other high-level dignitaries and military. And these missions were just a fraction of my overall experience, but I would like to point out that the United States military and intelligence agencies have had their hands in the pie of almost every country on the planet. I have been to most of them and couldn't believe some of the places we had bases or operations. If only I'd known how much more surprised I would be by what I learned after I got out. When I was issued my TS clearance, it covered normal everyday missions, and much of the above information I shared with Jay, along with old habits, I guess. But he identified himself as a contractor, working not only for the CIA, but NASA and also BlackRock, amongst others. I guess you could call him a tech guy. But given the nature of his job, he had to be trained in many non-tech things. Therefore, he had to have an appropriate security clearance, which he indicated was top secret Yankee White, with a full polygraph. And what that means is the quote-unquote national security clearance levels are confidential, secret and top secret, with sensitive compartmentalization information, SCI, being a further divider and special access programs limited further. If you think of the 3 levels as being floors of a building, your clearance lets the elevator go to a certain floor, but to access a hallway or a wing, you need the SCI category. Now, to access some of the rooms, you need the SAP, Special Access Programs key, and some rooms have their own elevators between floors. And elevators can only carry information up, never down, unless you want to get sent to the NSA jail. Now, Yankee White is not a national security clearance. It is a specific background check conducted on DoD employees, military and civilian, working under the White House's umbrella of operational control. And the Yankee White investigation and Yankee White clearance categories are completely distinct from the national security clearance levels, although based on similar investigative requirements and levels of risk. And Yankee White also has 3 category clearance levels. Level 1 is the highest, and many in that category will also be cleared for top secret SCI national security information. And examples of Category 1 include the Chief of Staff and directors of the various military support activities of the White House. But given he was forced to do a full polygraph, I'm fairly confident that he had Level 1 Yankee White. Level 2 includes most of the common, mundane, normal, everyday workers, and some of these will have top secret clearances, but some might only need secret. Now, examples include cooks, telephone operators, a Navy physical therapy tech assigned to Camp David, an Air Force public health tech who inspects the refrigerator on Air Force One for cleanliness. Quite a storm. And hail. And many DoD contract employees also fall into this category, and the guy who leads the flower beds at Camp David, who may or may not be justified for the security level clearance. Now, Level 3 is for the ceremonial units, and examples are Honor Guard members and band members. I'm being absolutely hammered. I'm sure you can hear it all, because I can hardly hear myself. Let's have a short music break and we'll get back to it. What can we play? Let's play Food again. We all live under the rain. Oh dear, that was some downpour. Right, on we go. For as long as we survive and the power doesn't go out, I do not consent. Right, now yellow, where are we? Yankee White is for DoD employees only, and the Secret Service is not a part of the DoD. Therefore, the Secret Service does not have the Yankee White clearance. And now he understood the concept that no one ever knows the whole picture except for the guys at the top. I would like to inform them that they don't know the whole picture either. Sorry. And we talked about how the system was designed to protect the elites through plausible deniability. And this helped us establish a rapport based on what seemed to be a mutual disillusionment with the system. But it turns out that this tech guy was a communications expert in pretty much every discipline associated with it. But his forte was cellular networks. And his job was to accompany the teams on ops and tap lines, that's hook into people's phone lines, extract information, whatever was in his purview. Now, given this fact, he was required to be trained in many of the same things the regular operators were trained in, and just in case things went to shit, he could extract himself and others as needed. Now, some of the training he was provided included defensive driving, firearms of all types, tactics, multi-climate survival, and various forms of trade craft. And his training sounded pretty interesting, and I assume it was from the farm. The farm is linked with the CIA. They have several farms where the animals go. And he said that he and his training partner were required to do many things together, and some of it really bothered him. In addition to the standard things you may have learned about in the movies, he was required to do things related to his speciality, and one such thing was to monitor several people's cell phones that were United States citizens and know everything about them and make a profile on them. And this was done in real time, the same as he would in the field. He knew it was illegal, but they tend to run roughshod over the rules, even in some parts of the training. And what they do with the cell phone information, you can leave it up to your own imagination. But another thing he was required to do in training was to care for a goat, and his partner would care for a sheep. Yes, you heard that correctly. Care for a goat, and his work partner would care for a sheep. And they did this for about a week, grooming, feeding and cleaning up after it and such. And the idea was that they would form an attachment to the animal. Then at the end of that week, they were told to slit the throats of the animals. They were told to put their hands inside the cut and feel around, and they were watching them closely for their reaction. He was sickened by what he had done, but he put on a happy face so he could continue through training. I'm sure you will all have some ideas as to why this is included in the course, and I will move on. After that, him and his partner were told to inject each other's neck with a syringe. This is getting rid of fears, aversions and phobias is one thing, but you have to wonder if there was something other than saline in those syringes. Later, he was injected with a chip for purposes of locating him in case he was ever held hostage or unable to be found. Does anyone else see this as a conditioning program or more, and to what end? I couldn't possibly remember everything he told me about his career, and I believe he's been with the agencies since his 20s, and he's now in his 40s and still works in the same capacity. But here are some random highlights. He's worked in 102 countries so far, and a good part of it was in embassies. He spent a lot of time at Mount Weather in the underground. Another base. Below the White House environs, he's been in many DUMBs at different levels, including Dugway, which is now called Area 52. He sat in Saddam Hussein's office chair while in Baghdad doing his work. He claimed he had everything about Epstein Island and who all the players were and all the flight logs. The Hillary Huma Abedin video, as well as many others, was a surprise to him, but those things were kicked up to a higher level and swept under the rug. He was shocked that Hillary got away with her shenanigans regarding the classified emails. And he said that in order for any of those emails to be deleted or moved, you would have to get much higher approval as well as override codes to input. What I'll add to that is, that means it went way above the government, including the president. The president has a very low security clearance. He said even he couldn't access something like that. Let's just say that she is not well regarded in his circles, or she wasn't. He asked me about the Go pills they used to give us for long missions. I never took them, but their use had increased over the years, and I believe there is a new variant that is out there. The original ones were pretty much methamphetamines, and he agreed there was a big problem with soldiers and contractors coming back addicted and they can't reintegrate into society. Now, one of his main principles is BlackRock. In fact, they are the preferred vendor of nefarious deeds nowadays, and I believe they have been for some time. He's heard of operations that ended up in genocide, and I happen to know he's right on that. Anything to get their mission accomplished with those guys. And he was struck by how many Mormons work for the CIA. Oops. His thought was that it was because they have fewer vices. Not quite. And he was unfamiliar with Citadel, Dragon Groups or colour-coded programs, for example. But sounds like he was kept naive to the overview. But he did have a good sense of how elites and shadows are pulling the strings, but nothing about the control system above those levels or the scaly critters that were running things. Now, the members' thoughts is, my impression is that the money was so fantastic that he turned a blind eye to some things that otherwise would be a no-go. You know, I've spoken to one of these people, and they were contract for hire for killing people. And the CIA owe him $27 million for contract killing. They haven't paid as yet and probably won't. It's just staggering, the costs. By no means has he agreed with everything that happened, and he's been traumatized from it, and it has offended his version of morality. I believe he needed to unburden himself, otherwise he wouldn't have disclosed the things he did. And a critical component of teaching is listening. Sometimes you can talk to them through their prism of knowledge and they will arrive at the correct answers, or even better, the correct questions. That's your opening to introduce knowledge they might be ready for, but time marches on and shadows darken even the best of intentions. Truth in the personal sense cannot be adjudicated by another. The knowing of right and wrong is within all of us that aspire to a higher evolutionary development. We do not need a handbook. However, in attempting to part the clouds for others, we must be careful to not enter them and stay in overview. An insight to the greed, coercion, following wrong orders under threats, and intimidation is all laid to bear by this piece. This is what goes on in the agencies. And I'm asking more of these people, and I keep saying in the show, come and speak to us. And give courage to other people who have worked for these utter psychopaths to turn the tide against them. I want you to listen very closely to the lyrics of this song, as it will preempt the next piece.